department, Ashish and myself run. That's it. That's the only difference.
They make you run.
Hi, Dr. Ganesh.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Ganesh. Dr. Anuradha, how are you?
Very good, thank you.
Welcome, Dr. Anuradha Ganesh. Welcome, madam. Welcome. Delight to see you on the screen.
You're very true, after a long time.
So while we all are set up for the launch and the start, just to remind everybody that we are already live on the forum is live and streaming.
Welcome, Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee. Welcome, sir.
Yes, sir. Welcome to all.
Dr. Sandeep, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Dr. Parvinder, and huge welcome to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to be here.
Good afternoon.
I would just like to inform all the dignitaries joined us today that we are live now and we will be starting the session proceedings shortly. Thank you.
Is there somebody who's going to be inviting all the speakers?
Yes, yes, sir. So I would be inviting all the speakers. It's 12:27 right now. We'll start exactly at 12:30 once the PSA sir joins.
Okay, good.
I'm just in the middle of a meeting right now. Yeah, sure.
Good afternoon, all. Thank you.
We have PSA joining. Good afternoon, sir, and welcome to the forum.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir.
Exactly 12:30 in the clock. I will request for permission from all the senior people here to start the session.
Please.
Thank you. A very warm welcome to all the distinguished dignitaries present here today at the release of the report on evaluation of innovation excellence indicators of public funded R&D organizations We are honored and excited to have this report launched today, and we are sure that this report will go a long way in enabling our innovation ecosystem to proliferate. With this, I may like to now invite Mr. Vipin Sondhi, Chairman, CII National Mission on Technology, Innovation and Research, and former MD and CEO Ashok Leland for his welcome address. Over to you, Mr. Sondhi.
Thank you, Pooja. Professor Vijayaraghavan, Principal Scientific Advisor, Government of India. Dr. Parvinder Maini, Scientific Secretary, Office of the PSA. Dr. Arbind Mitra, Honorary Distinguished Fellow and former Scientific Secretary, Office of the PSA. Mr. B.N. Satpathy, PSA Fellow. Colleagues from research labs, my friends from industry, Anuradha and Kishan, from CII, Raghu and Ashish, from CTIR, IER, Janak. Ladies and gentlemen, namaste and greetings to everybody. On behalf of CII, I'm honored to extend a very warm welcome to the distinguished dignitaries and the participants at the launch ceremony of the report on evaluation of innovation excellence indicators of public funded R&D organizations. And it's a happy and proud moment for CII to host the launch of this report, which is the first of its kind, unique and very important national initiative. And I express my sincere thanks to the Office of the PSA for engaging CII as a knowledge partner for this purpose. R&D plays a critical role in socio-economic development of nations, and the gains from the innovation and technological developments that emerges out from R&D have been found to be central to the growth story of every nation, and even more so now. Our country has a rich legacy of public funded R&D organizations, and we are proud that most of these organizations are immensely empowering the country's development, thereby paving the way for great progress in the future. In the years to come, as India seeks new models of innovation to drive its growth story, the prominence and contribution of these institutions will further strengthen. The present exercise and the report provides an exciting opportunity for not just enriching this contribution, but also aligning the public funded research with outcome-oriented goals like job creation and impactful research and impact to the society. We are truly delighted to have with us today Professor Vijayaraghavan, Principal Scientific Advisor, Government of India, and we really appreciate your time today, sir. We are confident that under your visionary leadership, the Indian R&D ecosystem is all set to reach new heights. And in this journey, such an exercise will be of immense importance. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Parvinder Maini, Scientific Secretary. And at the outside, I'd like to congratulate you for taking this role up. And it's indeed a pleasure to have your presence, and we look forward to working together. Also a pleasure to have Dr. Arbind Mitra, Honorary Distinguished Fellow. Dr. Mitra, who's been guiding CII on several impactful initiatives like the one today. And thank you, Dr. Mitra, for being such a great support to CII and to Indian industry. And we look forward to working with you ahead. I take the pleasure to welcome Mr. Satpathy, our partners from CTIER, colleagues from industry, my own colleagues in the CII Secretariat, and R&D labs, and all esteemed participants here viewing this session live. And as the world transitions from the worst ever pandemic to an era of technological driven growth, we as a nation must aspire to invest 4% of GDP in R&D by 2047, when we are 100 years old. And this calls for a focused approach by government, by private sector, by all the laboratories. And I must say, academia as well. And therefore, it is of utmost importance that the government and industry jointly devise mechanisms to encourage and scale up of R&D investments. There are immense opportunities for research labs to work with various other ecosystem players and to take the research ecosystem to a higher plane. Forward-looking initiatives will be the cornerstone for not just R&D labs, but all stakeholders to instill innovation and the research culture across the country. And through this forum, I'd like to emphasize the following 3 points. As I'd mentioned, we must increase investments that the nation makes in R&D. Currently at 0.7% of GDP, it's much below global averages. And we've got to leverage academia, R&D lab collaborations to be the key drivers of the same, along with a major initiative by industry. 2, we need to create, as I'd mentioned, structured mechanisms that help private sector to invest more in R&D, which will then enable seamless collaboration and partnerships with all stakeholders. And third, we must identify, if not done, the top 5 critical technologies of national and societal importance and take directed efforts for the same in a mission mode basis. With this, I once again would like to thank the Office of the PSA, ministries, R&D labs, and all the experts, the CTIR team, my colleagues in CII, for your participation and the contribution in this entire initiative. Thank you very much, and back to you, Pooja.
Thank you, Mr. Sondhi, for an insightful address. I would now invite Dr. Arabinda Mitra, Honorary Distinguished Fellow and former Scientific Secretary, Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India, to give his address. Over to you, Dr. Mitra.
Thank you, Pooja. A very good afternoon to all of you. Let me first begin, as Mr. Sondhi referred to. This is a unique and first of its kind initiative, which has been made possible actually due to a very constructive participation of all the laboratories, more than 180 laboratories, I understand, who came forth willing to help us in this process. Of course, the process did take 2 years, and there were periods of lull because of the COVID. There was also a period of apprehension. And the apprehension was that, the laboratories felt that this is an exercise which we were trying to do in order to actually rate and rank them, which is not actually a fact. It is certainly not possible to rate and rank almost more than 450 publicly supported labs in the country because of their disparate nature, because of their different mandate, missions, and legacy. Actually, the philosophy behind this whole exercise was to actually devise very carefully 62 indicators, which will be alluded to later, I believe. And these indicators were actually formulated in consultation with the laboratories in an attempt to understand and reveal the strength of each of the laboratories. As I told, these laboratories have long history. Some of them are pre-independence. Some of them have come out much after independence. Each of them have an enormous amount of strength. And also to understand what are the gaps that actually they need to address to be more futuristic and forward-looking. So once they were convinced that this exercise is actually to come out with showcasing the existing opportunities that they have and how we actually work together to leverage this opportunity in understanding each other's strength and complementing each other's role, all of them came forward and participated in a way which was actually very much unexpected till few months back. Now, I must say that the appreciation of this is very critical today. At this juncture, when the nation is trying to reimagine India 25 years hence, as we celebrate our 100th years of independence, the way that we are working needs to be relooked, and we need to reposition ourselves. So the whole idea of this exercise is to see how our labs reposition themselves, and therefore in the process actually reposition the entire STI ecosystem, which becomes increasingly relevant, which becomes increasingly contemporary, it becomes visible, and therefore more impactful. And this is very, very critical today. We need to be visible, we need to be connected. Our work that we are doing needs to actually contribute for the good of the people and polity. As I said, now the time demands that our laboratories and R&D institutions are able to seamlessly connect with the triad that I always talk about, which is knowledge creation, which the labs are doing, which is the research, the knowledge dissemination, which is the education, and most importantly, in this whole triad is the knowledge application or the innovation. And keeping in mind, therefore, the people and citizenry at the center of gravity, we have to work together and in many ways shed some of the burdens of legacy that we have been following over the last 75 years. And this is certainly possible if we fine-tune ourselves with the contemporary needs of the time, and if we are able to really connect and collaborate, as it was just alluded to. There is a tremendous amount of investment which the government has done over the last 75 years in all the public sector laboratories that we have. There is enormous strength in terms of infrastructure, enormous strength in terms of knowledge. There is enormous strength in terms of, the quality that they exude. It's just a question of actually connecting them together and leveraging them. And therefore, what we very smartly did was to actually come out with several new aspects, several new dimensions that the labs perhaps need to look into. And some of them in the parameters, just to allude to, is looking at the SDG goals, which I think all the labs are working. But, we need to focus on that. The country is committed to attend the SDG goals, which is so critical today as we see disasters looming large with climate change, the war, the breakup of, supply chain. So SDGs are very, very critical. Gender parity, inclusiveness, equity, things like how we actually connect with the startup ecosystem, because that is the future of India that is very clearly evident, and our labs need to be connected. How can we actually impact the socioeconomic structure of the country, which Mr. Sodhi, just now alluded to? And most important to do this is collaboration and partnerships. And we have seen that in COVID. Collaborations at the subnational level, national level, international level. Collaborations between academia, industry, with startups, with the diaspora, with the world at large is very important. And I think our labs today need to break the boundaries or the four walls within which our scientists are working. And that is very important. This we see more happening in academic institutions than in public sector labs. So all these things actually give you a sort of a 360 degree orientation to which our scientists, technologies working in the labs need to be exposed today in order that they become more relevant and visible. And in order that the public sector funding in R&D is growing, and the growth can only happen when the visibility is there. The increase in R&D funding, is always a challenge. And this challenge is met only when you are able to produce and show things which is touching the lives of people. And we did that very beautifully during the COVID crisis. And I'm confident that with what we have together, we would be able to. So I think this report is a sort of a process of self-appraisal and introspection of the laboratories, which will actually be a great enabler in the future that will help us to boost the entire STI ecosystem and the outlook of our public institutions, making them more futuristic, relevant for its people and polity, and therefore, making a sort of a very tangible impact, so to say, in the economic growth of the country as India repositions itself to the 100th years of independence. So let me once again tell that this is, of course, the first attempt we have made, the first of its kind, and certainly it is not perfect. There may be lacunae, there may be gaps, but I'm sure that we will be constantly working with you and having more partnership. And in fact, we will now plan to make sure that all our labs, both in the strategic and non-strategic sector in future, becomes participant in this exercise, and how our labs can become more seamless. They open our doors completely, connect, collaborate, and make a change. Thank you once again. Let me also at the end thank our colleagues in CII, CTIER, and my own colleagues, Mr. Brakashpati, Mr. Satpati, Sunit, and of course the leadership of PSA, which made this happen even during difficult times of COVID. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Dr. Mitra, for an enriching address. We would now proceed towards the launch of the report on evaluation of innovation excellence indicators by Professor K. Vijay Raghavan. Do we have your permission, Professor Vijay Raghavan, to launch the report and to show a video? Thank you, sir. May I have the video, please? Professor Vijay Raghavan, thank you all. It gives me great pleasure to invite Professor K. Vijay Raghavan, Principal Scientific Advisor, Government of India, to give his keynote address. Over to you, Professor Vijay Raghavan.
Thank you very much, Pooja. It's a great pleasure to be here with Mr. Vipin Sondhi, Dr. Arvind Mitra, Dr. Anuruddha Ghosh, Mr. Raghupati, Mr. Tito Kishan, Sandeep Chatterjee, Dr. Subbu, Dr. Kale, Scientific Secretary to the Office of the PSA, Dr. Parvinder Maini, and Mr. B.N. Satpati and Sunit Mohan, who prepared this report in collaboration with CII and CSTIA. This is an extraordinary attempt, and you will hear a lot about the content and the details of how the indices have been put together and what all the evaluation indicators are and how they go forward. So I will not go into those details, but I'd like to say that we must view the evaluation of our institutions in a manner just as we evaluate our interactions with individuals or groups of individuals. There are many factors in each of us which we could do far better, but there are many factors which make us invaluable and unique in a manner which is very useful, both in a utilitarian way, but in an emotional way, in terms of support to other people. So just as there are qualities in an individual which make us worthwhile and which need to be amplified, and other qualities which should be ignored or minimized, the same goes for institutions. There's a grave danger, therefore, if we average out, give a number to each of these qualities, average them out, and say this individual is this number, or this institution is that number. That is not the way to evaluate complexity or understand complexity. You can understand complexity by appreciating the different components which go into that complexity. And therefore, that's a very important lesson in the way the evaluation indices have been structured. Another component of evaluation is that it varies with time. People and institutions get better, there is obsolescence, but there's great wisdom and value even in institutions or individuals or departments which are going towards obsolescence in terms of historical value. How does one keep that, gain that, support new ventures without throwing away the baby with the water as it were? So these are the kinds of challenges. But let me now go back to what social and economic challenges we face and how those can be addressed by evaluating institutions in the manner which I've just said. Take a map of India, and on that map, put in all the laboratories of the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, about 37 laboratories. And they will go from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Gujarat to Tripura. You will have laboratories everywhere. Do that again for the Defense R&D Organization, for the Department of Science and Technology, the Department of Biotechnology, the Indian Council for Agricultural Research, the Indian Council for Medical Research. Soon, as you keep adding these, the country will be chock full of spots from one end to another. Now on the same map, put in the list of central universities. Again, there'll be a dense pack. And if you add on to this, the state universities and colleges, there will be no space at all. Now, this is the beauty of what we have built up. We have built up extraordinary capability and an extraordinary ability to receive that capability and learn from the environment to build further capability. So this feedback interaction between our research institutions, our universities, our state universities, and colleges is something which can be extraordinarily impactful. But in practice, what we have, and which needs to be reformed and reformatted going ahead, is something slightly different. Today, 90% of our research funding goes to these laboratories, and 90% of our students go to our university system, our state universities and central universities. You might have a CSIR lab right next to you, next to your college, but students going to the college might happen to visit the laboratory for a National Science Day once a year to listen to a speaker, which is not bad at all, but their interaction is relatively low. The laboratories typically say that their purpose is to address high-end scientific problems, and they are not involved in undergraduate teaching. And those who are involved in undergraduate teaching, even in our central universities or in our colleges and state universities, don't have access to the highest end research facilities. So research and the university system has been bifurcated. Despite this, the successes of Indian science have been extraordinary. Whether it is space, atomic energy, defense, icons of our success in the public view. But of course, if you look at other factors, if you look at how our lifespan has changed since independence, if this were 1947, most of us on the screen would be dead. This is now 2022, and lifespan is reaching over 70, close to 70, and will soon go above that. So there's been a huge success in saving newborn children in an unprecedented manner. Food is available, nutrition is available, education is available on scale, yet our growth has been at such scale that we still see, even though absolute numbers of people who have access to education and science and technology institutes have increased, we find that still a very large number of people need this access and need to be lifted out of poverty. So to go ahead, as Aurobindo mentioned, Vipin mentioned, others mentioned, you need more investment, but that investment needs to be nuanced and action-oriented. The problem with such scale which we have is increasing investment and evenly distributing it will be of no value at all. Indeed, sadly, that is what many of our institutional structures end up doing. If there's an increase in budget, we are loath to make discriminatory decisions within our institutions and therefore distribute those resources uniformly. And therefore, our institutions don't perform to the extent it can if we focus our investment inside those institutions on those aspects which can address specific kinds of problems. Those problems can be give us solutions in a short term, mid-term, or long term, doesn't matter. But our institution investment needs to be carefully structured. Now, there's another aspect which the evaluation indices need to address and have addressed very nicely, is the supposed difference between basic and applied science. Now, this is an unwarranted and unnecessary dichotomy which has been driven, and this leads to the conclusion of two kinds, that basic science is by definition not of any value, and applied science, no matter how badly done, can be of value. Nothing could be further from the truth. There's only one kind of quality science, good science, and the other sciences are poorly structured or bad science. And really good scientists interact seamlessly with basic and applied aspects. How then do you measure various kinds of institutions? How do you measure an institution dedicated to basic science, which will have impact over a decade or many decades time scale, and an applied institution with an applied label, which is supposed to have impact on a yearly time scale or less? How do you distinguish between, for example, the CSIR Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology with the CSIR Central Road Research Institute. The Road Research Institute can't say, I'm working on road research and I'll give you results in a 30-year period. And the CCMB cannot say that, okay, I'll give you a new drug in 6 months' time. So these are the kinds of balances which are needed. And both will benefit enormously by close integration to the ecosystem. And that's why the indicators are important. If it points out to the CCMB, for example, that you have great internal basic science capability, but if you partner with a local chemical industry, Dr. Reddy's or Biological E, or even further away, companies in Ahmedabad or Pune, you can actually have a mechanism by which you continue to develop new science and you continue to interact with industry in an application-oriented way. Similarly, the Road Research Institute would benefit greatly by collaboration, let's say, with the Department of Science and Technology's Autonomous Institute, the Jawaharlal Nehru Center, where extraordinarily high-quality work on material science is being done. And therefore, that material science in the laboratory can link up with Road Research Institute to have a more direct application. So this mindset of looking at your institute's success or failures only as what that institute is supposed to do, needs to go, and these indicators will help us look at collaborative avenues which can leverage us far, far more than what we're normally doing. And therefore, a spider's web of different points which you evaluate, different lines which you evaluate, communication, basic science, HR, internal management, applied science, and ask, how do institutes fall in place along these axes will tell us overall, just as we see different facets of a person, we can see different facets of an institution. And we can tell an institution, you're extremely strong in basic science, you're very poor in application, continue to build on your strengths, don't compromise that and try to do applied science, which you're not good at. But for that, collaborate with another institution, which is very strong in applied science, and their basic science complements yours, so you can work together. So these are the types of collaborations which need to be in there to be pushed, not think of metrics, which then these institutions try to gain the system and try to get better and better at everything and get a better average number. This is the goal, and this is being done through an enormous amount of interaction with CII, with all the partners, with people in my office, as well as Janak Nambar and his colleagues. So I congratulate all of them. Ashish Mohan at CII. So this is really absolutely going to be very valuable. For this to be successful in the long term, this has to be a dynamic exercise. And what is the frequency of that rapid change we need to look at in evaluation? There'll be two components. Institutions should be able to look at different components of the evaluation and project what their strengths and weaknesses are, and have opportunities for collaboration. But an external system also needs to go ahead and make sure that the work that gets done well. I would also finally like to thank our colleagues at the Niti Aayog, where this exercise started under their leadership, and I look forward for this to be and be a continuing tool in our evaluation of institutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Vijay Raghavan. You have inspired us all with your insightful address. Thank you once again. May I now invite Dr. Anuradha Ganesh, Director and Chief Technical Advisor, Cummins, to give her address.
Thank you. I'm extremely happy to see that there is a major difference in the parameters that we have included. I think it's very, very important and essential to observe and note that we are seemingly moving beyond looking at infrastructure development in the labs, from that to including industry, which is very, very important, including social impact. We have not talked about it much. We have not talked about industrial collaborations. We have spoken about it, but I think now we are poised to take off from TR level 3s, 4, that is collaboration and translation research, which is again very important from 7 to 8, and very, very important. Just 2 days before we celebrated the International Women's Day, and I saw a very clear recommendation, which is, I think, very, very important. We need to keep that in mind, that we want to include And that's one of the very important outcomes and recommendations. We need to include diversity. And it's important to keep in mind that the second career of women might be really very, very useful out here. All right. And it was very overwhelming to speak to some of the women on the 8th March when I did at the various two industries where they actually wanted to do collaborative research with these, the labs. And I think this is the right time. This is the right platform, right results that we have. And I think we can move forward from it. And I'll be so happy to tell them that there is something which is coming up for all if they really want to go. With social impact is another thing which is so very important. And we see that there is a focus on that now, which is we have never measured till now the work which is being done in terms of social impact. I have my own experience. I know when I went in electrified a village using the technology which was developed at the lab, it was very important for me. I had a lot of support from the industry, but it was very important for me to actually inform and enthuse people to be happy about the fact that the village was lit. But if we are able, now that we have the development goals very, very clear, at that time it was not very clear, the SDGs in front of us, the scientists in front of us, the industries, the CSR, all with us, with enough investment which would come if we are clear with what we have to do. I think we are all poised to collaborate with the academia. We are poised to collaborate and include the industry. We are poised to collaborate and include the women and the other diversities. I think we are just there and it's the right time to take off. I congratulate and wish all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anuradha. May I now invite Mr. S. Raghupati, Principal Advisor, CII, to kindly give his address.
Good afternoon, everybody. Professor Vijayaraghavan, Mr. Vipin Sondhi, Dr. Parvinder Maini, Dr. Arvind Mitra, Mr. Satpathy, Janak Nabar, and other dignitaries from the Office of PSA, R&D Labs, and good afternoon to everybody. It's my pleasure and honor to be part of this interesting panel and very important launch of the report on R&D Labs and to share the views of CII and the industry. I fully echo the sentiments and beautiful thought process that was highlighted by Professor Vijayaraghavan and Dr. Arvind Mitra. I personally see the outcome of this report as a fantastic opportunity for industry and R&D labs to work together. There's a Himalayan opportunity, a great opportunity for industry as well as R&D labs, and a great win-win situation for all the players concerned, and a great win for India also. From the R&D labs perspective, it is an excellent way from an industry R&D labs collaboration. It's an excellent way to reach all the developmental activities and commercialization of the innovation process. Then it also personally, every innovator, it's a great delight for him to see this innovation getting implemented somewhere and the society is getting benefited. It's a great personal satisfaction. And this opportunity further gets excited or initiated by this approach. Last but not the least, it is also a great opportunity. The industry R&D linkage can monetize many of the excellent research work done by the R&D labs. And it will generate more financial opportunity for R&D labs to further do research. So this creates a tremendous opportunity for the labs perspective. From industry perspective, industry is always looking for ideas by which their competitiveness can be increased, some innovation can be done. And this area of already many of the excellent research that has been done is available in a platter, and industry has not seen it to this date. And this is an opportunity where CA can do some linkages between the R&D labs and the industry by which this is brought to the limelight. So from industry point of view, the innovation comes in a platter for them, and they have to apply it and make sure it is successful. From the country point of view, this is what the country wants. You create an opportunity which is already a lot of good work has been done and it has been converted, and the country becomes competitive, industry becomes competitive, and creates a win-win situation for all. So with this thought process, what my humble suggestion from CA and as well as the industry, CA will initiate active linking with the support of Office of PSA under Blessing Sir. We would like to initiate a lot of activities by which the R&D labs will participate in many of the CA events and programs and committees. We would like to link when CA is present both nationally, regionally, and state-wise also. And many of them operate in committees and the interaction with the industry. And we would request R&D leaders and lab representatives to come and meet and talk to the industry. We'll have series of interaction by which both of us will know what each other's needs are and how what type of technology is already available and how the linkages can happen. And we'll make a humble beginning now. I think within 2 or 3 years, we'll definitely make a very significant progress. I see this is a win-win situation for everybody. And we look forward to your support, sir. And with the blessings of PSA and this office, I'm sure this will be a great success. And we look for your guidance and support. Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Raghupati. May I now invite Mr. Tito Kishan, founder, Pro in Consultancy, to give his address. Over to you, Mr. Tito Kishan.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. Professor Vijayaraghavan and all the dignitaries. I see it's a great opportunity to define what is available is what I see. Because once we know what is available, it brings awareness of what is available. And I see this entire exercise gives us awareness to everyone on what the labs are there and what they are capable of. The opportunity that I see that the industry and the labs can collaborate comes with the clusters of MSCs and startups. If you look at, for example, there's the CSIR CECRI, for example, it's in Karaikudi. They're working on multiple disciplines. But if you can have avionics as one of the startup being grooming along with them, that actually builds a very ecosystem across the country where the multiple labs can be the resources which they have, and they can give the technology. If I look at the technology licensing as one of the parameter, that is an area where we can look at these labs can obviously contribute to the ecosystem around. For example, MSME doesn't have their own clusters of innovation. So if we can able to bring the clusters along with this CSIR labs, where the funding has been both at the basic research level, we can able to foster that inputs and make a self-balancing ecosystem for both the MSME and as well as the startups. That's one thing which I see. And very importantly, when we look at the IPR licensed in the context of the pandemic and in the context of Atmanirbhar Bharat, one of the very critical requirement is how the technology and intellectual property is being developed in the country. And if we can able to bring that connections and collaborations, then we can able to bring the right outcomes where the independency can be brought in the country. And one of the article that along with Dr. Anuradha and Ajay, which we wrote on frugal innovation for national challenge, it's very important that we need to leverage the resources that are there and bring a lot more awareness on the intellectual property and how we can collaborate with the existing resources where we can build a strong startup and MSME, not just in the digital space, but in the core of research and development. I thank the opportunity provided here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tito Kishan. May I now invite Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee, Menti, to kindly give his address.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all. Dignitaries, Professor Vijayaraghavan sir, Dr. Parvinder Maini, Scientific Secretary, beloved Dr. Arvind Mitra sir, my colleague from CDAC, CII team, Mr. Sondi, and other members, CTIR. Of course, this is indeed a commendable effort to actually assess all national labs in the country for their performance on innovation indicators, so economic contribution, STA excellence, to identify the gap areas. Actually, this will help to prepare our labs as well as the country to capture the untapped potential existing R&D services. If you see last year, 2021, R&D spending globally is $2 trillion, where the Indian contribution is minuscule. So this type of report actually prepared us where this opportunities lies, how, as my previous speakers is mentioning, how the startup ecosystem can be created around those developed technology, and what should be the next program or scheme the ministry should initiate to create that ecosystem. Of course, our ministry is having premier R&D organization like CDAC, CMAT, and SAMIT. We have started this activity from 2019 after the National Electronic Policy 2019. So industry-led R&D, and where the project proposal we are now shaping up with those laboratories in a dedicated center of excellence or incubation center, where funding is also taken from industry. In our part, that is electronic materials and photonics division, we have already created 14 such centers in a emerging field like 2D material graphene, quantum materials, e-waste recycling, where we are giving a substantial fund now, but with a chartered with the industry, where the startup will be created. So this type of approach and capturing those things also may be required in the next type of similar type of report, how it is delivering to the startup and the industries, how they are helpful to those ecosystem, because the next emerging technology we require to create new startup, then only the industry ecosystem can sustain. So I'll be actually trying to mention some of the points maybe in the next this similar type of effort may capture to create the IP in the lab or the publications may not help us. So can you just find out what are the IPs are actually getting commercial and what is the viability, and rating according to that also we can capture. And also, as I mentioned, the success stories of startups in some of the activity around that, and also the satisfaction of local manufacturers with the technology developed in those labs and offered to that. And this will actually boost the confidence level of local industry, that will actually further push to the Atmanirbhar Bharat in the country. So this report will definitely serve as a basis for deciding the policymakers and also the funding agencies for rating the capability of those labs and quality outcome delivery and also technology performance while the commercialization. So on behalf of METI, we congratulate entire team of CII and others involved and PSA office for this type of commendable contribution to the R&D fraternity. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee. May I now invite Dr. Subbu, CDAC, to give his address. Over to you, Dr. Subbu.
Yeah. Respected PSA and other dignitaries, it's a privilege for me to be part of this panel. And it's an excellent initiative since we started working with Mr. B.N. Satpathy and his team, CII team, in providing the inputs from CDAC, which is being an applied R&D organization, and we have our wings spread at 12 different cities in the country to collate and see and the outcome, especially from the TRL level of maturity, what we have brought out is extremely promising and interesting for us. This exercise also brought us certain areas of focus for improvement, definitely, like what has been largely talked about, industry association. And we have also taken internal steps to sensitize all the labs about this. And this is an extremely important and useful initiative. I really congratulate the entire team for taking this up, and I'm sure that this would be a continued journey, and CDAC would actively be participating with these kind of initiatives and working closely with industry and taking it further. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Subbu. May I now invite Dr. Parvinder Maini, Scientific Secretary, Office of Principal Scientific Advisor, Government of India, to share her address. Over to you, Dr. Maini.
Yeah, thank you, Pooja. Professor Vijay Raghavan, Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India. Shri Vipin Sondi, Chairman, CII National Mission on Technology. Shri Raghupati, DDG CII. Dr. Arbinda Mitra, Distinguished Fellow, Office of PSA. Shri B.N. Satpathy, Senior Colleagues from Office of PSA, CII, CTIR, METI, CDAC, Industry, Directors of the Lab, and all other stakeholders. Really, greetings of the day. First of all, I would like to really congratulate the entire team for bringing out this report, which is actually very timely and touches upon the valuable role the public R&D labs play in driving the STI ecosystem. Now, we remember in 2015, the Niti Aayog started with the output outcome monitoring framework to evaluate the performance of various labs, which was to some extent helped in strengthening the management of the public resources, but also helped in studying the impact of the various interventions in the schemes. So the present report, which is also based on an initial framework prepared by Niti Aayog, is a step further in this direction, wherein the performance of labs on the basis of the socio-economic contribution, STI excellence, and organization capabilities and practices. So the data which is collected will actually help the labs in understanding the gap areas and assessing their strengths and weaknesses. So as it was mentioned by my co-speakers, the report considered 62 exhaustive indicators, yet there is ample scope for including more parameters for bringing out a comprehensive performance evaluation. Now, industrial collaboration, social impact, aligning with SDG and national priorities, startups, all this has been brought out by many of my co-speakers here. But some of the things that immediately come to my mind include what is the self-reliance nature of these labs? That is, do they have the potential of falling into the Atmanirbhar bracket that government is actually really stressing on? And of course, this requires considerable R&D investment and also requires encouragement to take up this in large scale. And some ideas, of course, have come from Sri Raghupati ji and also from Sri Krishnan. And of course, this can all be taken up if the second phase comes up. And secondly, the other thing that comes to my mind, which is always bugging me, is all these labs are funded from the public money. So whether the data that is collected in this lab, is it available for everybody to use? I mean, the data which is shareable. And from that, the second point comes is do these labs really have a data policy? Because as far as I know, many of the labs in India do not have a rigorous or robust data policy, which is the demand of the day. And another point that comes to our mind, which is also discussed here, is what is the outreach of these labs? That is in social media, electronic media. As more a lab comes on a social platform, its activities will be rigorously scrutinized, thus helping in better performance. Now, taking a clue from what the principal scientific advisor had just mentioned, that is collaboration across disciplines. Now, multidisciplinarity is becoming a big thing these days, where we need to solve the real life problems like climate change, healthcare, food security, energy security, water security. All these are very complex problems, and these have to be solved through using a multidisciplinary approach, that is using different disciplines to come together and work and collaborate in an integrated way. So this is one key factor that can be used to assess the labs and whether they're ready to actually collaborate with other disciplines, other labs, and give a holistic picture of the problem in hand. So the work initiative should definitely be carried forward, probably with a new framework and with a larger database of labs, which considers the comments of the stakeholders and also the learnings from the study. Meanwhile, the data that is collected, which is available online on a portal that has been prepared, can continue. And the analysis of this data should also be shared with the lab so that they can actually do a course correction. And it also acts as a positive feedback leading to further improvement. So with this, I once again congratulate the entire team led by Dr. Mitra, Shri B.N. Satpathy and Shri Suneet Mohan, and the CII, CTIR team led by Shri Raghupati and Shri Janak Nabar for bringing out this report. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mani, for an insightful address. I would now invite Mr. B.N. Satpathy, PSA Fellow, Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor, Government of India, for his closing remarks and vote of thanks. Over to you.
Thank you, Pooja. Respected Professor Vijay Raghavan, Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India, Dr. Maini, Scientific Secretary, Dr. Mitra, Honorary Distinguished Fellow, Mr. Bipin Sondi, Chairman, CI National Mission on Technology Innovation and Research, Dr. Anuradha Ganesh, Director and Chief Technical Advisor, Cummins, Dr. S. Raghupati, Principal Advisor, CII, Mr. Tito Kishan, Founder, Protein Consultancy, Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee, Dr. Subbu, Dr. Kali, directors of the 193 publicly funded labs, Suneet, Janak, Ashish, and Namita. It has been a great journey. It has been the most difficult exercise in my entire career. In my earlier capacity in Niti Aayog, I was associated with three important reports. One is the ease of doing business, digital payments, this circular economy, and the last one was the research and development expenditure ecosystem. All of them involved a lot of data collection and all, but none of them had this kind of challenge which I faced in this exercise, which I took over only in 2019, July. The most difficult part was to get a response in time from the labs. The data, if there is no data, there is no report. There is absolutely no way to evaluate any of them. And you need to have the data which are consistent, which are valid, which are credible, which can be tested with the labs itself. So that is where, we had a tremendous support from PSA and Dr. Mitra to motivate the labs, come along with us and share the data. That was the biggest challenge. The second one was relating to the indicators. There are many indicators with the new indicators, startups, SDGs. So that was really difficult for the labs to understand them and see whether the data they have, they don't have, and how they cater to these requirements and all that. The third one was the pandemic. All of us, most of us were the victims of this term, the second wave of the pandemic, and we had a difficult time to collect the data. So all these were overcome because of the steady, unflinching support from the principal scientific advisor. It was all the more reinforcing when Dr. Mitra came along, and he, as the chairman of this group, he led us from the front. The third person whom I must say about is Dr. Mahapatra, who was handling this project before I took over. He, in fact, was involved in the pilot study which was required to validate the questionnaire, the survey instrument. He had done that, and so he left us when the pilot study was over, and I took over from there. The fourth one, I must say about my colleague Suneet, who were looking into the operational aspects very, very carefully. And now, as for the way forward, as Dr. Maini have said, we are looking in the short time when I met her yesterday and tried to explain, and she said, "This is a very good report." I must say, it gave us such a sense of satisfaction that we have done something which is really good, which will be a path-breaking thing. Nowhere in the country such a voluminous report is available with so much of data, with so much, and each lab can look at it at a glance, the performance. Now, CII, who's a major stakeholder in the whole thing, and the contract was given to them. And they have really, I have been working with them for the last 2.5 years. And I've been bothering them. I must have made 100 calls to Raghupati, to Namita, to Ashish Mohan, and to Janak and his team. They have been all stood by us. They've never let us down. They did an excellent job in collecting the data, explaining the data through webinars, which are not a part of the contract which they had. And then they also made it so clear that not a single data which is not validated will enter the study and all that. Now, I must say a few words about Niti Aayog, which has prepared the framework without which this study would not have been possible. And my thanks to Dr. B.K. Saraswat, my former boss in Niti Aayog. He was member science. He was instrumental in getting this. I must thank also the 23 secretaries of the Government of India, who are the main stakeholder departments in this. And they really helped us whenever there was a data requirement. I think Suresh Pal from ICAR, he was very important for us because the major labs were from ICAR. He helped us. CSR headquarters helped us. Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee, who is here, he helped us with the data from MIT and all the 4 labs which have been covered, and Dr. Subbu, without which it would not be known. Last but not the least, the directors of 193 labs, they have really worked with us and they have really cooperated with us, without which this report would never have been made possible. And this data which we have collected are all transparently collected and all credible data, validated data, and very important data which we have for the benchmarking. So baseline report is now ready, and Dr. Maini will be looking after the second phase of this, and we will try to go get this so to make this data compatible with the future, and also intertemporal consistency is there, and the data is collected again afresh for the year 2021 also. With these words, I must say, this is a gigantic effort. It would have never been possible without the support of so many CII, PMO, NITI Aayog, Office of PSA, the lab, the ministry. It's a whole collaborative effort which has really been successful in this. Thank you so much for all the coming here and all that.
Thank you, Mr. Satpathy. With that, I would once again like to thank all the dignitaries and the panelists here for their time and valuable insights and for gracing the launch event today. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Wonderful work. Thank you. Congratulations.